bad.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Varendes, and today we have Matthew Valentinez. He is executive producer of the documentary A Open Secret, and it's about a very controversial issue. It's a very controversial documentary. It's about the huge pedophilia problem in Hollywood, and I think when the documentary came out in 2015, probably not so commonly known, probably not so commonly believed, but there's this huge issue in Hollywood, and I think it's not just in Hollywood. I think it's in politics. I think it's with a lot of the powerful elite that there's pedophilia parties and cover-ups, and we've seen it with so many different names, and which we mentioned on the podcast, so I won't talk about it now. But if you guys like this podcast, if you think this is an important topic to get out there, an important documentary to get out there and spread, then please do share it on your social media, share it on your Facebook, Twitter, wherever, and help spread this conversation and help spread this documentary. And they've had some pushback. It's been kind of hard to get it out there for obvious reasons, but please share it if you think that, if you also think that this podcast and this conversation is important to do so. And thanks again, guys, for listening. Obviously, subscribe to the show on our YouTube channel. I'll put links to our guests' website and social media and all that stuff on our YouTube channel, RV Theory 6, or you can just search the Ripple Effect Podcast. Also follow me on Twitter at RV Theory 6, Instagram at RV Theory 6, or find me on Facebook, Ricky Varendes or Ricardo Varendes, and throw me a friend request. So thanks again, guys, for listening. I truly, truly appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Thanks for being with me. I really appreciate it. It's funny because I've known of the documentary for a long time. I've shared it on social media. I've done a bunch, just told people about it and recommended it. And a while ago, I mean, because the documentary isn't actually brand new. It came out in 2015, I believe, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but now with all the news stuff going on with all the Weinstein and it seems like every other day there's a new celebrity that's being charged with some sexual accusations, that it seems like it's kind of picking up steam again. And I know that also, I believe one of the other producers of Open Secret was on InfoWars, and then I saw you on Watching the Hawks. So then I'm like, you know what, let me try to get in contact with because I believe I possibly used the contact form on your website once. I don't know. I think I definitely attempted to contact you guys at one point, but then I saw your name and I'm like, you know what, let me try to contact Matthew directly and see if I have any luck. And then I obviously had luck, and now's a perfect time. Almost seems like a better time now to talk about this than it was when I initially probably had intentions of having somebody on the show. But it is insane because this story is so big and this issue is so big that it's sometimes hard to wrap your head around it. And it's in Hollywood, it's in politics. You have the Speaker of the House, Hastert, who was convicted. You have the Penn State scandal. You have, it's all over the place. And I think the only time I've ever touched on anything even close to this subject was, this must be episode 146, I believe. But I think it was like episode 37. I did it with a filmmaker who did, I don't know if you're familiar with the documentary, Are All Men Pedophiles? And it's a really controversial, interesting documentary. and we kind of talked about this issue and just how different parts of the world and different times in history and different cultures have different opinions on pedophilia and causes of it and ways to, I guess, fix the issue or resolve the issue, and so it is one of those. And he got a lot of shit for his documentary, and he got a lot of pushback and whatnot, because the topic is so taboo that even talking about it is wrong. It's bad, and you can't even do that. And I think that alone is the issue. I think no topic should be basically off limits to talk about. I think all topics should be talked about, especially the controversial ones, because I don't think we do anybody any justice by not making it a public discussion and not talking about this stuff. I mean, there's even some debate that children who unfortunately do go through something tragic like getting molested, they actually don't realize what happened to them or how bad it was until publicly, they realize that it's so looked down upon, and then that traumatizes them. So that's kind of a weird, I guess, way of looking at it a little bit, or a weird kind of issue, because it's like, well, how do you fix that? But it is a very complicated. I guess my point is it's very complicated and very huge topic and issue that should be talked about. And I my hats go off to you and everybody who's a part of this film, because I think you guys took a huge risk, career-wise, personally. I'm sure you took a risk, and I guess let's get right into it. How did you get involved in this film? Was there any fear of pushback and public perception of you guys personally getting involved in this and all that, and what made you want to get involved in a film like this?
Well, I got involved in the film through a friend of mine from college. He actually wanted to do a documentary. He's a Wall Street guy. I'm an entertainment lawyer, and we were just having a conversation about doing a documentary on boxing, because he's a big boxing fan. And then he actually, a few weeks later, changed it and said, I want to do something that's going to help victims, women and children who are victims of sexual abuse. Maybe we can do something that's charitable. Because if we make any profits from this documentary, an open secret, all the profits are going to go to a foundation that we set up to help survivors and to help prevent future victims of sexual abuse. So that was sort of our goal all along. And that was sort of, Gabe Hoffman is my partner in this, and he's the sole financier of the project. And he had sort of tasked me with finding an interesting subject. So at the time, I had lived out in LA, and I had heard a lot about Corey Feldman and sexual abuse of minors and kids being flown to Mexico to be abused, on like private jets. And you'd always heard about those types of things. So we knew that Hollywood would be a ripe place to sort of further investigate this. And we also chose Hollywood because we could shoot it there. Originally, we were thinking of shooting locations all over the world, but that gets expensive very quickly. And look, we wanted to reach a bigger crowd than just the typical documentary crowd. There's been a lot of great documentaries about sexual abuse, but let's be honest, that crowd is pretty small that sees those documentaries, and we wanted this to reach the average person, because we really feel that this issue of sexual abuse affects everybody. It's in every neighborhood, it's in every country, it's in every large city and small town. So we knew that Hollywood's international appeal and the fact that there's famous people in Hollywood would draw some attention to it that it might not otherwise get if we were talking about, say, something like a Penn State. And also we chose Hollywood because we figured that there wouldn't be such a defensive side of it. We figured that once we expose this, people inside Hollywood would welcome us and embrace us and help us root this problem out of Hollywood. Whereas with the Catholic Church, people can, people can be Catholics and they can be very defensive about it and say, well, yes, it happened, but now we feel like people are attacking the Catholic Church. Or with Penn State, a lot of alumni felt like they were being victimized and the school was being unfairly persecuted. So you want to be aware of who you're going up against as well. And I think going into this, we were pretty naive for two reasons. One, we thought that Hollywood would support us like they do for so many other causes. I mean, Hollywood around awards season, it seems like they jump on every cause there is. I mean, you can see them how they're jumping on Me Too right now, and that's a good thing. But we thought there would have been a Me Too for this as well, and there never was. And then the other part of this is, while we knew it was probably pretty bad, and our research showed us how bad it was, I don't think we realized exactly how bad it was and how infested it really is. And it's pretty scary when you realize how bad the industry is plagued with this problem. And that's why people are keeping it silent, because there's so many connections. It can negatively affect Hollywood so badly that this could end up bankrupting Hollywood or breaking it. I mean, you're seeing companies go down. You're seeing shows get canceled. You're seeing careers get ruined. And in Hollywood, everyone is, it's unfortunate. Like right now, Bryan Singer's film, Bohemian Rhapsody, is shut down for a month because he's allegedly sick. But there's a lot of rumors that he hasn't been showing up to set, that he's been really difficult on set, that he's been fighting with people, that Fox is thinking about getting a new director. And that affects thousands of people in the industry, right? I mean, that's, people have to pay their mortgages, and just like the average workers. So that's another part of this, is it's about how does it ripple down and affect everyone underneath it that isn't involved or isn't guilty. But if a movie goes under, now they're going to lose their job. So I'm sure a lot of what Fox is thinking about right now is, okay, we're in business with Bryan Singer. There's a lot of rumors going on about him, but can we finish this film and still make money and not lose money on this? As opposed to maybe another industry would have fired him immediately already, right? I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but that's sort of how the industry is so wrapped up. It's whoever hired Bryan Singer has to be questioned at this point. I mean, these rumors about him have been going on for years, so why did they do another movie with him? And you might have to say, well, maybe they did another movie with him because some of the people involved in making these decisions might be just as guilty as he is. Now that's speculation on my part, but that's kind of where we're going with this. It's almost like, who isn't involved at this point? I mean, the lack of leadership in Hollywood has been astounding. And when you see all the people that covered up for Harvey Weinstein, I mean, it's insane. He was the most powerful producer in Hollywood for a long time. Won Oscars, ran Oscar campaigns, used his position to get women and to allegedly rape women, and even had it built into his contract, it looks like, for payouts for stuff that he did. And you gotta wonder, did people really not know this about Harvey Weinstein? And look how scared people were to speak up for decades. And that's just one guy. Now let's say that there's dozens, if not scores, maybe hundreds of guys out there who act like this, who act like Harvey Weinstein did. And now what if some of those guys have actually, rather than abusing adult women, they've been abusing young children the entire time? And that's kind of what we're saying, is they're like Harvey Weinstein's, but they're even worse because they've been molesting these young children. They've been giving them drugs. They've been mentally controlling them. It's almost like slavery. And it's really sick, and it's scary that the FBI, that local law enforcement hasn't done anything. I mean, what we've been able to find out, and what some other reporters have been able to find out, it's hard to think that local law enforcement couldn't have found out this stuff themselves, or that they don't know it. I mean, I can't imagine why LAPD hasn't gone undercover and investigated some of these things. I mean, these are well spoken about instances. You're telling me that the LAPD couldn't send a guy undercover to see if this is going on? And it's frightening. And we're glad that it's finally coming out, but we know that the worst is still yet to come. And really, we're still waiting for somebody really big and famous to come forward, because we think that it's the worst hasn't come out yet about how bad this is. And you know, we were almost too early with this film, because it's hard to believe, you know, and that's one of the reasons why we chose Amy Berg to direct it, because she was Oscar nominated for Deliver Us from Evil. And we didn't want this to be tabloid. And we're not looking to tear down Hollywood. This isn't a right or a left issue. This isn't a political issue. I mean, I personally love Hollywood. I work in the industry. This is just about a right versus wrong type of thing. And we need to get these people out of the industry that are doing this. And we need to get these people who should be a privilege to work in the entertainment industry, to make movies, to write movies, and to work on TV shows. And these people are just abusing their power. And it's in ways that are, I consider sexual abuse almost as bad as murder, if not worse, especially when it's with children. So something has to be done, and we think the tide is finally turning. But I'll be honest with you, we're still frustrated that it's not turning fast enough. And every day, yes, you are seeing things. It's almost like we're so flooded. You just saw James Levine, the conductor for the Metropolitan Opera, and he worked up here in Boston at the Boston Symphony Orchestra for a while. You know, he just came out this weekend. Every day there seems to be a new person coming out with some of these problems. And you just get so upset about people who have said, oh, we've heard about it, or they investigated it and never went anywhere. And it does start to feel like there's a lot of people in on this that we don't know about, and that this is a much bigger problem than we could have ever have imagined. I mean, if you just go and if you just look online and you look for sexual predators in your own neighborhood, you know, there's probably 3 or 4 within a 1 or 2 mile radius of you, or at least one, depending on how big your town is. So that's how deep this problem is. But now add on top of it millions of dollars and really powerful people. That's why we focused on Hollywood, because we knew that the pedophiles in Hollywood use their power the same way pedophiles do in a small town, but they're much more wealthy. They have more things to give these children. And also the children that go there are probably more susceptible. Their parents are more susceptible. They might want to be famous or be in the industry. So it's like the perfect like cauldron of problems right there. It's the best place for pedophiles to function right now is Hollywood. And it's one of the few industries that really allow children to be on set, even as young as, you know, infants. I'm sure at your job, you're not really allowed to bring in like a 12-month-old baby, but for a TV show, you can. And sure, there's some laws in place, but they're really not that great. And the people that can work in this industry, in our film, you've seen that there's a lot of convicted pedophiles who are still working even after they've been convicted, and they're registered sex offenders, and they're still allowed to work on sets. Like Brian Peck in our film, if you've watched it recently, he's one of those guys. And you can see all the different connections to these. They all know each other. They all run in the same circles. They all get each other jobs. They all throw each other the same parties, and there's a network of grooming young men and you know, bringing them into the industry and giving them different jobs and sort of moving them up and passing them around. And they get more famous the more acceptable they are to what's going on. And another one of the things that we've sort of discovered is, well, in a lot of ways, this functions like the mafia. And you have to participate in an act of pedophilia. You have to be like in a room raping a young child with other people. And once that you've done that, it's like you're in the club, because now you're guilty with them. So even if you stop doing it, or even maybe if you didn't participate in the sex act itself, but you were in the room and you didn't report them to the police, now you're guilty. Now they have that over your head. So we've had people come to us and say, they've told us we have to come in the room and do this with them, or we have to leave. You know, and that's how sick and how deep it is. And I think that's why there's also this level of silence, because people have done it. And I think for a long time, they thought they would get away with it, because in their minds, they don't think it's that bad. They don't really think it's bad. They think these young kids want this, and they think it's just the perks of being in Hollywood, that they get to have sex with young boys, and these young boys are fine with it, and that they're mature enough to know what they're getting involved in, when really they're not. So it's I don't even think they really think it's a criminal activity. The way they rationalize it and justify it is different than how our brains work. And that's why it's so bad, and it's so deep, and it's been going on for decades in Hollywood, that it's almost considered, it is considered like normal at this point. And we've had so many male actors tell us that they've been approached. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're straight or gay or whatever, that they've been approached just in crazy ways sexually. And that probably 90 to 100% of men in Hollywood are approached for sexual favors in this manner. And, you know, if you just read about Terry Crews, how he was just had his genitals grabbed, he's in public by his agent. You know, Terry's a big dude who played professional football, and this was at a public event by one of the Adam Vennet, who is, at the time, he got, you know, he lost his position, but he's still at the company. But he was the head of the motion picture department for William Morris Entertainment, or William Morris Endeavor. And, you know, that's the abuse of power, and how normal this is considered in that industry. And it's so weird, because I've been doing a lot of interviews, and I was on NPR a couple weeks ago, and the day I'm on NPR, the guy from NPR is getting fired. I was talking about potentially selling this documentary to a company that I don't want to name, because, I mean, they're a good company, but then the dude that headed the documentary department got fired like 2 days later for sexual harassment. Wow. So it's bizarre. I can't even, get this to companies, where every company in Hollywood right now, I think, is almost like frozen, figuring out how deep are these problems. And it's going to be very interesting to see where Fox goes with Bohemian Rhapsody and Bryan Singer. Like, is the other shoe about to drop on Bryan Singer, and is some information about to come out about him that finally might expose him for, things that have been alleged? Because that's what we think's about to happen. And we think that Bryan Singer isn't even the biggest person. We think there's people much, much wealthier and more powerful than Bryan Singer involved in all of this. And that's the scary part, because what are they going to do to keep this quiet? And you're seeing the connections to, Hollywood is very connected to Washington, and I don't know, man. I'm not like a conspiracy type of person, but the deeper that we've gotten into this, the worse it's gotten, and the scarier it's gotten. And we're waiting for the legal system and for local police and for the FBI. We're waiting for them to start busting some people and start doing some things, because they're all hiding behind the statute of limitations. In our film, we pointed out that Gary Goddard was a good friend of Bryan Singer, and Gary Goddard in the last 3 or 4 weeks has had three people come out and say that he was a serial pedophile with them, including Anthony Edwards from Top Gun and ER, and I think he's on Law and Order, Menendez Brothers. So Gary is really good friends with Bryan Singer. Bryan Singer put Gary in his DVD commentary from the first original X-Men. And And if anyone hasn't seen the film yet, and if they don't want to watch the whole thing, I recommend to your listeners, watch the 48-minute to the 50.5-minute of an Open Secret, and you will see Bryan Singer is there talking with Brian Peck, doing the DVD commentary. And Brian Peck is now a registered sex offender who got kicked off a show for molesting a young boy on a Nickelodeon show. And he's also plays the hot dog vendor in this clip. And then in the clip, it shows Gary Goddard in the background. And Brian talks about how Gary's a good friend of his. And now all these people are coming out about Gary Goddard being a pedophile. So if that's true, in that short little clip, there's one already convicted and one possibly likely to be allegedly convicted, or allegedly a pedophile, and if that's true, hopefully convicted, Gary Goddard, right there, who are two of Bryan Singer's best friends. So we can't say that Bryan Singer is a pedophile, but we can say he hangs out with convicted pedophiles or people who are alleged to be pedophiles with a known history of it, and it's quite odd. And what is Fox Studios doing about it? You know, they say nothing about it. I actually reached out to them 3 weeks ago and said, we'd sell you this film because, we think eventually you're going to have to fire Bryan Singer anyways. And we think that now would be a good chance for Fox to step up and do the right thing. There'll be a lot of goodwill with this. You guys could get this film out to all the people to see much better than we can. And any profits will go to charity. We just want to get it out to as many people as possible. But have I heard back from them? No. And will we? No. And look, we've tried the same approach with Amazon and with Netflix, but nobody wants to touch this. And hopefully that changes, because we'll get this out. We'll release this ourselves if we have to. We're already sort of working on that if necessary. But we'd really like to have the industry step up and sort of promote this, because people need to be educated about what's going on. And this can't be hidden anymore. It needs to be faced. And the industry the longer that they try and cover this up, I think the worse it's going to be. And the people that really step forward and deal with it and clean house, I think those are going to be the people that survive the most in the industry. And those are going to be the people that are seen as leaders. Because I think right now, we as Americans, it's tough for us to be associated and to watch things that we know, oh man, I can't, if that guy was a child molester, I don't know if I can watch his stuff anymore. There's been that argument, can we separate the art from the artist? And look, I'm a film school graduate. I guess I kind of used to think so, but not anymore. I can't watch things anymore if I know that the person on the other end of it is a pedophile. And you can say that that's very similar to like Victor Salva's latest film, Jeepers Creepers 3, that came out and kind of bombed. But it's insane to think that that guy was still able to be given a film and be given another chance to make a movie when he was convicted of molesting like a young boy. I think he was like 12 or whatever on that movie Clown House, and he actually filmed it and saved it, him molesting the kid. Jeez. And for some reason, he was able to, when he got out of jail, Disney hired him to do Powder, right? Disney hired him, and I think it might have been through Miramax as well, and I think that might have been like 95, 96, whenever that movie Powder comes out. Now, if you look at what that movie Powder is about like a kid with some special powers. I remember I'd seen that movie and I thought it was pretty good. That's bizarre. And then when you look and you see that when he did Jeepers Creepers, he did it with the support of Francis Ford Coppola. I think some of it might have been filmed on Coppola's land. I think Coppola lent him some money, believed in his talent. And you got to ask yourself, why is one of the greatest filmmakers of modern history, who's made some of the best films of all time? I went to film school because of Apocalypse Now. It was one of my favorite movies. And I think we can all agree that The Godfather is probably the greatest movie ever made, at least American movie, or top 3. why is that guy helping out Victor Salva? Makes no sense to me. And it's just, it's weird. And then, so Victor Salva's movie just came out on the Sci-Fi Channel like 3 or 4 weeks ago. That's NBC Universal. You know, why are they associating themselves with this dude? It's strange. And who's giving him chances? You know, Brian Peck, the registered convicted pedophile. Like, Charlie Sheen got him a job on Anger Management in 2013 as a dialogue coach. Charlie Sheen at the time was the most highest paid television actor in the industry, #1. And now you got to wonder, why was Charlie Sheen the #1 paid actor? Is it because of his talent? Was it simply because that show was so amazing? Or are there other reasons that people want Charlie Sheen to be quiet? You know, do they want him to be happy? Do they not want him to open his mouth? You know, and why would Charlie Sheen give a convicted sex offender a job on that show when clearly the show did not need that guy on it? And I'm just curious if the press has ever asked Charlie Sheen that, you know, because Brian Peck claims to be friends with Charlie Sheen. So I don't know if maybe Charlie Sheen doesn't know Brian Peck from a hole in the wall. But it seems bizarre, because then you had all those claims about Charlie Sheen being the one that, you know, I don't know who reported it, but did you read about how Charlie Sheen might have been the person who raped Corey Haim? And of course he denied it. We have no evidence of that, but we do know that something happened to Corey Haim and Corey Feldman on the set of that film, or Corey Haim. I don't know about Corey Feldman. So there's just too many contacts here that it's not coincidences. And I don't even think when we went into this, we had any idea it was going to be this bad. But the reason why we've held out on the film is because we've also known that information is going to be coming out that, like what happened with the Harvey Weinstein thing. We just didn't think it would take so long. But we knew that when the information came out, this film will be front page again. And there's going to be more information that comes out. And this film will be front page again. This film can't be denied. And it really is just the tip of the iceberg. And we see this film as a way for people who really want to figure out the truth. You can dive off. Once you really get into this film, if you want to investigate further, it's all there. I mean, you can start looking at other documents. It's more like a jumping off point, because the way we wanted to put this film out was for it to be able to stand up legally and factually 100%, and it can. We could have put more stuff in this film, but that would have been, you know, we didn't want to put anything that was 80% true or people wouldn't go on the record for, even though we know it was true. Like, for instance, we approached a lot of women to be in this movie too. They were just too afraid to be involved, or they were too, like, mentally ill, or just too distressed, or their lives were too out of control to even come on. You know, I mean, we're talking about some young stars who might have been teenage stars on like Disney or Nickelodeon shows, who might be young women in their 20s right now, who maybe lost their minds for a little while. You know, I think you can kind of figure that out, who we're talking.
Yeah.
So we sort of reached out to those people, but even their parents couldn't reel them in. You know, their parents lose control of these people. There's a whole process out there called emancipation, where kids are allowed to be legally separate from their parents at a young age, and that happens more in Hollywood than anywhere else. And the studios and the networks kind of push that or look for it, because it allows the kids to work longer hours. It allows them not to have parents around who might ask too many questions. It allows these kids to move in with agents or managers or producers, or to live on their own, you know, at like 16. And it's screwed up. And the industry, I personally don't even think children should be allowed. I mean, I realize this is you know, I'm probably way out on this one, but I don't even think children should be allowed to work in the industry. That's just my personal opinion. But this is America. You know, people can do what they want. But just from what I've seen, it doesn't make sense. I mean, so many of these young child actors they seem to have such a horrible life afterwards. Not all of them. A few of them have great lives, but most of them, or a large percentage of them, have miserable lives. And it's just based on how they're treated in the industry. And it's shocking. And I don't even know why people would allow it anymore. Like, we wouldn't let like a 12-year-old work in a fire department, even if just because they love being a fireman and they have a dream of being a fireman. We wouldn't let them work into a fire and run into a burning fire. But for the same reason, a young child might say, "Oh, I want to be an actor," and they say, "Well, it's their dream. I guess we'll let them pursue their dream." You know what? Let them pursue their dream when they're like after 18. Is my advice. But that's getting off the topic. I've been rambling, so I don't know if you have any specific questions.
No. I mean, I love when the guest also goes on long rants, because I'm actually known for them. So I'm glad that. And plus, you hit on so many interesting things that I wanted to talk about, but I'm glad that I didn't have to ask the questions. You went right into it, and I think this is. The reason why you probably went on that long stretch was because I think it's obvious that you're very passionate about what you're doing and what you're exposing. And when you're really passionate about something, I think it's hard not to want to talk about this and get this information out there and share all the knowledge and info that you have. And it's a scary topic, because we've seen it with the Catholic Church, and the way they covered it up, and how many kids are mentally scarred, or adults now that are mentally scarred and will never have their sanity or normal life because the Catholic Church wanted to hide these predators instead of doing what was right. And like that movie Spotlight, that you being from Boston, and I live in Massachusetts. I live in Ludlow, Mass, which is right near Springfield. And so we know all about the Spotlight story, and Amy Berg was the perfect person to also be involved in this, because I love Deliver Us from Evil. That was one of the first documentaries I really fell in love with, and it's another kind of scary, controversial type of documentary. But it's the thing about this subject, it reminds me of like the JFK assassination. Or, it's like you start researching one thing, and then it leads to another thing, then it leads to another thing, and and it's like this endless road of like, holy shit, like, where do I go? And there's just so much to this. But historically, I mean, there's been other documentaries that have had their issues with trying to get attention. I remember the Franklin scandal. If people aren't familiar with it, just search it. You'll find information on it. But there's this documentary about it, about the Franklin cover-up called Conspiracy of Silence. And that was, I think, almost completely done and ready to be released, and then never released. And you can find some bad quality version on YouTube. And that was about pedophiles and stuff like that. And
yeah, I've seen that, and I believe there's a lot of truth in that documentary for sure. And I think we're just lucky now because of the internet. It's harder for us to get shut down. I mean, look at us. We haven't even been able to have a television network buy this or even offer to distribute this. So imagine how much harder I think that was like in the early 90s, how much harder it was back then. I think it was about to be shown on like A&E, but they shut it down. And a lot of reasons why they shut it down is it's not always nefarious. It's just basically liability. There's a couple lawyers who are like, hey, we're not totally sure if all this has been cleared, and we don't want to be sued. I get that. I'm an entertainment lawyer. I understand that. We hired some of the best clearance attorneys for this documentary. We had extra insurance. One of the reasons why this film, didn't show at the London Film Festival was because they claimed that their tabloid laws over there would have opened them up to be sued. Though I think we argue that. We disagreed with them, but that was a defense that they had for not showing the film. So that's part of the reason why in our film there are no women. And a lot of people will say, well, why not? Is this just about men? And it's just our film is the way it is because everything in it is backed up by facts, and we want it to be 100% backed up by facts, and obviously it has been. And sure, we could have put a lot more in there, but we held people to the strictest standards of actually going on camera. A lot of people say, why didn't you get anyone more famous to come on or come out? And they've never tried to make a documentary like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 5 people that did come out, I don't think you realize how courageous it was for them to talk. Everyone that talks in that documentary really has courage. I mean, even the experts and the guests have courage, because this was done, 3 or 4 years ago in a climate that's even far worse than now. And we wanted people, and that's the frustrating part, is because we know that there's some famous people out there, really, really famous, who, if it didn't happen to them, they know people that it did. And if they just opened their mouths and came out and said, hey, this happened to my friend, or it happened to me, things would change overnight. Like, it would be front page news for the next month,
But look at Woody Allen. Like, everybody kind of knows that he, it's a kind of sketchy marrying such a young girl and that whole thing and all the rumors that go around Woody Allen. But people still kind of hire him. They accept him as in Hollywood, and then people still enjoy his work. And it's kind of weird, because it's the same thing with the guy who did X-Men, like you're talking about. It's almost like I almost feel like either everybody's in on it, or everybody's blackmailed, or like you talked about before, they know that you did it, so you won't talk, so they kind of peer pressure you into also getting involved. What's your opinion on that? Why do you think it seems to be accepted and more people aren't talking out? Is it so many, or the other thing too is you're hiring other people that are like-minded, so I wonder if that could be also an issue.
Well, this is gonna, I'm gonna come across as crass and self-righteous in saying this, but I think that the type of people that want to work in Hollywood, a lot of them are just screwed up people, and they will do anything for fame and success. And I think that's a big part of it. Like, you still have a lot of actors that are willing to work with Woody Allen, like you said, and they say, oh, he's so talented, and he's a great writer, and sure, all of that may be true, but if you believe in your heart that he is a child molester, and it's never been proven, so I guess we don't know if that's the case, but don't take the job. But they take the job anyways, right? And I think the people that work in Hollywood, they put their career first before their morals. Now, I don't think that's probably in a lot of industries, but I think in Hollywood it's more prevalent than any other, and it's that simple. I think people are just so concerned with being famous, they'll just look the other way. And then there's so few people in Hollywood that really make the decisions, and there's so few roles that if you turn down a role with somebody big like that, you might never get another one. So that's the part of it too. It's like going along to get along, and you don't want to be considered a troublemaker, and you just want to do your films, and you really have to do enough work in the industry to get to a point where you're actually able to have some creative input. So you don't really have the power to say yes or no to things. You either accept the part or you don't. I mean, even Steven Spielberg has to make a Jaws before he can make a Schindler's List, So I think that's another part of it. But that's why we need to really change this right now. That's why I really hope this moment in time, these next couple weeks and months, this next year, I hope 2018 is the year that we really out all these people. And I hope that And Hollywood could really take the lead on this. This is what Hollywood is missing right now. It's missing the opportunity to be the leaders on this, to do the right thing. You know, it doesn't have to go down the road of the Catholic Church and just try and sort of cover it up or pretend like it didn't happen or pay a bunch of people off and then do a couple false apologies while it's still happening every day. I mean, I think the number 2 at the Vatican just got arrested for smuggling in boys a couple weeks ago. So this is the industry's chance to really change it, but it's not going to change unless a lot of people at the top either oust these people and get together and say, okay, we're going to get these people out of the industry, or if just a lot of people that have been in the industry for too long just need to retire. Because a lot of what happens in Hollywood, it's like football coaches, you know, they just bounce from, sometimes you'll see like a football coach get a job in the NFL and you're like, why does that guy have a job? He's never won anything, but he just gets bounced from job to job to job. And I think in Hollywood, it's the same thing with the studio heads and a lot of the big producers. Even if they haven't done anything successful in like a decade, or they're still being given high positions of power just because they've done it before. And maybe we need to finally bring in some new blood, and like a new generation needs to come in Hollywood. That we need a lot more women in power, and I think we need a lot more younger people making decisions, and we need a lot more diversity in the industry. That's another big part of it too. Right now, I mean, this industry is controlled by a lot of just older white men who've been running this industry for a long time, and everyone that's in a position of power has been worked their way up for 30 or 40 years in Hollywood, and you're not going to affect change when you have people that have been there and know where all the bodies are buried, and they don't want the truth to come out. So I think that's another part of it too. Like, Hollywood is such a factory town that, you know, it hides behind this veil of corporate attitudes, but it's really not a corporate city. And I think the boards and the chairman of the boards and the directors and the investors and the people that are passively involved in owning these companies need to get more actively involved in the leadership and really need to clean house. And I don't know what all the HR departments are doing at all these companies, but they've been failing miserably. And what's going on within the agencies, when you're seeing all these agents admitting that they're sending their clients to hotel rooms where guys are just dropping their pants and making these women, like, you know, perform sexual acts if they want the part. I mean, come on. What are the agencies doing about this? Who's running these agencies, and what type of morals do they have? What type of men are they that they could keep sending these women over to these roles? And, you know, the women themselves have to stick up for themselves a little more too. I think that's part of it. And I hope we're starting to see all that. That's the motto of our film, is be courageous, report it, life gets better. And the more people report it, the more power that we'll all have to make changes, you know. And we just have to avoid being fragmented and allowing them to victim shame and allowing them to divert from the focus of the issue. We've seen that a lot with our film. You know, they'll maybe attack one of the people in the film because that person might have had a shaky background or had some criminal involvement or some fraudulent involvement, and then they'll focus on that, or they'll come after us and they'll call us homophobes. Whatever it is, they try and divert from actually focusing on the facts of the case. And I think another thing that they might try and do right now is, it really can't just be about women. Me Too can't be about women. It needs to be about everything. It needs to be about men, women, and children together. And I hope that women can support all the men and children who have been abused too. This needs to be like solidarity, because it can't just be one issue over the other. Sexual abuse needs to be about everybody, because in Hollywood, it's just as many men, if not more, are affected than women.
Yeah, but you know, I think it's scary, the people who are involved in this, the amount of money and power and influence they have. Because you see people like, like I mentioned before, Dennis Hastert, he's Speaker of the House. Had tons of people who rumors going around and this and that, and finally he got exposed. And this guy was a accused pedophile, and weirdly enough, a lot of these pedophiles they coach teams, they do they work in nonprofit organizations, they constantly put themselves in positions where they can be around children, or in the Catholic Church also, and you look at Jeffrey Epstein, just obviously all the rumors that go around him and his island and all the girls that have accused him of things. And I mean, this is pretty out there. And yet, I mean, these people are multimillionaires who have tons of influence, tons of power, friends with people at the highest levels. I wonder how much of it is just being afraid of exposing the wrong person, of the backlash of maybe even their life. I mean, look at DC Madam. Not to say that I know what happened or whatnot, but I mean, kind of coincidental that she was saying she wouldn't commit suicide, and then she disappeared. Same thing with I don't know if you know the story of Ray. I forget his name, like Ray McCarr. He was a Pennsylvania district attorney who had like a mysterious disappearance, and some people think that there might be some link between the Penn State scandal and him. They think that he was basically in the process of investigating it. And so, I mean, there's all this stuff. So, I mean, again, it seems kind of conspiratorial and scary. But when you look at all the people at the highest levels, I mean, we have current and past presidents that hang out with Jeffrey Epstein, who is, like I said, you can go on his Wikipedia page. You don't have to go on some conspiracy website. Go on his Wikipedia and you could just read about women who've accused him of things. And, so it seems like it's just the people at the highest level. And because of it, you have all these people who are going to cover up for each other, and then all these victims who are just going to be very afraid of speaking out. And that's why I think what you're saying, this idea that like people need to come out, because every person who does come out makes it a little bit easier for the next person to come out and the next person to come out. And then it needs to create such a rift that you just can't ignore it anymore, that eventually this is exposed. But what do you looking so closely into this topic and this issue and all these accusations, what is it? Do these type of positions of power, if it's politician or a multimillionaire or a head of of some film company or whatnot, like what is it that it seems to attract these predators? What do you have a personal opinion on that?
Well, I think with Hollywood, it's an illness. Like, I think pedophilia is a mental disease. I'm not a doctor, but I've spoken to a few about it. And I consider pedophiles very similar to serial killers in that sense.
But very similar to serial killers, aren't they? Isn't it also seem like mental disease almost sounds like you're born like that? But in many cases, these pedophiles and serial killers are people who are also a part of, they were victims of something at some point in their childhood. Either they were molested or they were, so it's kind of it's weird, because it's like, I've had this internal conversation with myself about, when does the victim become the predator, and when do you stop feeling bad for them and really just look at them as a predator and stop looking at them as it was an unfortunate victim who, because of very unlucky circumstances in their lives, something that was scarring in their lives, end up creating this monster. But if those things didn't happen, they wouldn't be that monster, So it's almost like, in a way, you almost pity them, and some of them, when you hear their stories and you hear about what happened to them.
I don't pity them.
Well, maybe pity's the wrong word, but you get what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like...
Yeah, you're trying to understand them, and I look at them that way, but I look at them as sick people who need to be studied, but need to be separated from society, and at least in the near term will never be cured, right? And that's another thing we know about these pedophiles, and that's another reason why we knew this film would come out, would be, would have its day, because pedophiles can't stop. It's like a serial killer can't stop killing, and sometimes they just want to be caught, and sometimes maybe pedophiles just want to be caught, but no matter what, they can't stop. So they're going to keep doing it. It's like it's just built into their system. It's how they're programmed.
But don't you think that because this is another conversation that or another part of this conversation that I think is really interesting, and how it can be counterproductive. So this idea that, for example, these victims that we feel bad for, obviously we feel bad for them because they've been traumatized, they've been molested or whatnot. If they end up doing the same thing, we come to find out they end up doing the same thing because of some mental scarring or something that happened to them at their childhood. It's like it's a cycle, it's this cycle, and it does get to the point where we're just like, okay, if we keep looking at the issue, the issue, like you said, I think most people will agree that it is equally, if not worse, than murder. But I think it also has to be a topic that we have to be able to talk about. And I think
absolutely. Right. I think England does that. Now, here in America, where, I don't know if it's because of our puritanical ways or our religious
background
thinking. Yeah, but and that's what that's why we did this, because we want people to start talking about it. We want people to start recognizing it. We want people to start seeing the trends, understanding the grooming, understanding. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on this, but just in the last 6 years since being involved in this, even with you just see the patterns when people come out, and you see, especially, I think, victim shaming is something that we're going to change. That maybe in the next year or two is really going to be something that's overcome. The denials, the way that people lie about things. Like, for instance, if you look at the Judge Roy Moore case, he has a lot of his defenders. But looking at all the information I have seen from that guy, I clearly think that he was likely a pedophile, and that and I have no doubts that he probably abused those women. Because just of the patterns that he follows and the responses that he's had, it's the same thing. So we can recognize all this and why we need and how we break this cycle that you're talking about, because there's a lot of people in prison who were abused, and they went down that road of violence because of the abuse that they received as children. And that's why it's so dangerous for pedophiles to be in prison, and why they get killed and beaten is because a lot of the guys in prison experienced that themselves, but they didn't become pedophiles, but they did become violent, right? Yeah. And they want to take it out on those guys once they get in there.
But what I meant by being counterproductive in regards to, I've heard Christopher Ryans, who wrote the book Sex at Dawn, talk about this, and I think I might have talked about this with the filmmaker who did Are All Men Pedophiles? But this idea that if we make it so taboo, or if it's looked down upon so much to even have these thoughts, not act on it, because they are two different things, and there's two different words for it. Just to have the thoughts, it becomes counterproductive to scare them off from being able to try to get help. Because what happens is that it's almost like we look down upon somebody who even has the thoughts, and then it becomes counterproductive, because what ends up happening is, instead of them getting help before they end up acting on those feelings or desires that they might have, then they end up keeping that inside, and then eventually end up acting on it because they didn't get the help that they needed quickly enough. And so it is, to me, that's a very interesting part of the debate and the conversation, because it does seem like, as much as we don't want to acknowledge that, maybe the best way of handling it is maybe being more open to people who are having these thoughts and are willing to get help and are willing to say, hey, I have a problem but I don't want to hurt anybody. I want to get help. But because it's looked down upon and it's, you know, they're all looked at like they're monsters, then, you know, it kind of scares it could potentially, and I think it does, because Christopher Ryan talks about getting emails in regards to this, that it scares them from coming out and talking about this and getting the help. So, I mean, in that sense, it almost does become counterproductive, I think.
Yeah, but that's a lame excuse in my opinion. They can get help if they want to, and our society isn't so screwed up that's why there's psychiatrists and doctors and there's confidentiality.
Yeah, but don't you have, I mean, it's you're thinking.
You're taking the responsibility on society there, and I disagree with you there.
Well, no,
right?
I'm not putting the responsibility on society. What I'm saying is that I think that, like you said it yourself, that you think it's worse than murder. Just think about that. Like, just that statement itself. I mean, why would anybody want to admit or that they have thoughts that some people believe is worse than murder? You know, I'm not saying
because thoughts aren't action. So as long as they don't act on it, that's fine.
I think rationally, yes. I think I agree with you, but I think unfortunately most people put the thought of it and the act of it, they put them almost in the same category. That somebody who's thinking of it is just somebody who hasn't done it yet or hasn't got caught doing it or whatnot, and it's one and the same. Because
not our legal the way that our laws are set up, and not the way that our medical system set up. So they'll be fine. Like, if a serial killer is thinking about killing somebody, that person can get help before they do it. And it's the same way with this. They still know the difference between right and wrong, you know. And if they don't know the difference between right and wrong, then they're not mentally competent to stand trial anyways, right? So it'll just go down a different angle. But if they're able to know the difference between right and wrong, then they're able to get help before they act upon it. And sure, would they be scared because they're afraid people will judge them? I guess, but I think getting help is better than actually acting on your desires that could really hurt somebody. So, you know, and that's why I also think that's what we're trying to do with this film is really get people to talk about this subject matter and get families to talk about it and to sort of remove that stigma of this whole thing, right? Like, look, this happens to a lot of people. I bet you all of us, everyone listening to this has either been a victim themselves of sexual abuse or knows someone in their family that has been molested or sexually abused. It's usually by a family relative or somebody you know close. So this is so common that let's all just start talking about it, and we can remove that stigma from it, and then we can help identify how it happens, who are the most likely people to perpetrate it, how we can prevent it, how those people can get help, and how we can also avoid those people. You know, and that's the goal of all this, is to really start talking about it. But the first thing that we need to do is take the shame away from, you know, I don't even like calling them victims anymore, survivors, and putting the shame on the people that do it, right? And I consider this very similar to, like, when I was growing up. I'm in my, mid-40s now, but when I was growing up, drinking and driving, for like our parents and grandparents' generation wasn't a big deal, but now it is. There's like a shame of if you drink and drive, and it's really cut down on how many people drink and drive. And I think that and that's because people started talking about drinking and driving, and it became, if you were with your friends or whatever, it said, hey dude, like, give me your keys, don't drive. And I think, that's a very simple way of how to deal with this, but I think it's very similar in the sense that it's going to take families talking to each other. It's going to take students talking to teachers. It's going to take, brothers and sisters talking to each other, and parents talking to their children. And just being aware of who everyone is around. And because what these pedophiles are really good at, and another reason why it's able to stay hidden for so long, is that they're really smart at picking the right people. The people that they pick on are the people who are the most likely to remain silent, and it's really teaching people about the grooming techniques. And that's what we try and do in this film too. I mean, you can see it with Marty Weiss. The guy literally puts himself inside a family. He becomes like a family member over a slow period of time. I mean, he's in a lot of these like the family Christmas videos and birthday videos. I mean, it's almost like a demon working its way into your family. That's what these guys do. That's how sophisticated and intelligent they are. They are master hunters. This is just like it's built into their brains. I mean, that's why we call them predators, because that's really what they are, and they can't help it. And they know how to push the boundaries ever so slowly in a way that just gets them in there, and in Hollywood, it's like a manager or an agent or a producer or a position of power. At Penn State, it was a coach, and in Catholic Church, it was a priest. It's always some position of authority and trust and power, and we chose Hollywood because that position of authority and trust is even more exaggerated, and they have more toys and more benefits to offer these children, and that's why we wanted to expose it in Hollywood, because we knew once a few big famous people get out there and this becomes like it's something worldwide that people talk about, that's how we can start talking about it more. Because it'll be somebody that everyone can identify with. Most people around the world can identify with Hollywood, and I think that's why Hollywood is trying to stay quiet about it right now too, because Hollywood is smart when it comes to PR and understanding where this can go. So they're probably trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to handle this in a way that doesn't look like we're covering it up, but it also doesn't look like, it's not going to ruin our industry either. I have no doubt in my mind that there's people that, like the top people in Hollywood, have been talking about this for weeks, trying to figure out what they can do to prevent their industry from going down, because it very well could go down, because it's so infested and there's so many people. I mean, look how many women have come out just with Harvey Weinstein. I mean, I don't know. Is it over 50 by now? I don't know. But you look at those charts, and imagine if there's like 100 guys out there with charts that big. It's insane. So it's almost like most people have suffered this than not in Hollywood. So I don't know, man. It's going to be a crazy time, and what we're just kind of waiting for. I mean, we finally saw the LAPD open a task force, which I almost feel like they did reluctantly. I mean, it seems like we have to demand justice. We as the people have to demand that the police and the FBI actually do stuff, because it doesn't seem like they were doing it. It seems like they were asleep at the wheel or purposely ignoring all of this. And that's what has me the most frightened is, I mean, what was LAPD doing this whole time? I'm not trying to come after the police, but I realize they can only do so much if people don't come forward. But now that people are coming forward, we better see some prosecutions, and there better be a lot of people that go to prison. I'm not just saying like one or two people. I'm saying like, scores of people better go to prison and get long sentences. And turn on each other, because this is like an organized criminal conspiracy. And if they can get some of the lower level people to start turning on the higher level people, that's where we're really going to see some change, right? And we've seen that. We have evidence of that, where there's lower level people who go out and groom these kids, or go out and find them in clubs and then invite them up to parties in the hills and then pass them on from an agent to a manager, and they sort of work their way up a train. And there's definitely a hierarchy involved in this that really just lives off these young kids. I mean, everybody's always known that you can go out to LA and there's a new bus coming in every day, right? I don't know if you've ever lived out there, but Hollywood is full of just lost souls who are ready to be preyed upon, and it's horrifying. And we're almost just looking forward. We're looking for this to end. We know there's going to be some bigger news that comes out that just makes everything we've been saying irrefutable. It's not going to be a question of, is this happening or not? It's just going to be a question of, we know it's happening. Here's the proof. Now, what are we going to do about it? And I'm really worried about our justice system. You know, is our justice system up to the task of handling this? This is going to be a real moment of justice, and that's and right now, I got to be honest with you, I don't have that much faith in. I don't have much faith that justice is going to prevail. I think the dark side is going to win, and I think they have been winning.
Have you thought about making or re-releasing the film or making a part 2 to try to get attention on it again or anything like that? I know you guys have attempted to go on Netflix and YouTube and all that stuff. Is there any, for example, if somebody's looking for the film now, I believe it's on Vimeo, right? But is there any other places that people can find it?
No, we're just releasing it on Vimeo right now, but we will be. If no one buys it, we're going to put it on an aggregator so it'll get out there and people can buy it on all the different sites that they want. And, you know, we're also going to sell it as a DVD soon. You know, we're in the works for that too. In terms of like a part 2 or some other stuff, all I can say on that is just stay tuned. I can't give you any more information about that, but I'm very confident that some more stuff will be coming out in the near future that will be related to this film. That I think people will find fascinating. And
well, I think Corey Feldman, who, you know, when he was in your film, I remember talking to people about your film, and people were like, oh, you know, can you believe everything he says and this and that? And now, you know, years later, you just see like, holy shit, there was a lot to what he was saying, and people finally are like, okay, maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe the issue is as big as he was making it out to be.
The issue is definitely as big as he's making it out to be. And we invited Corey to be in our film, and, you know, he sort of loosely advised us, but he never really came into our film. And I know now he's asking for like $10 million to do a film, and he's worried that he's not going to be protected legally, but we offered him all that legal protection. You know, we offered him legal protection, and we would have protected him if he wanted to participate further, but he chose not to at the time. I think he was focused on his book. And I almost think right now that Corey has done enough. I'm sure he feels like a lot of pressure to do more, but he doesn't need to do more. There's so many other victims out there that I think are going to start talking, that he's not the lone voice in the wilderness anymore. And it shouldn't just be about him at this point either, right? I think we're almost putting too much focus on Corey, because he's just one of thousands that this has happened to. But it's been great in the sense that, like, if you just watch Matt Lauer, how poorly he treated him in that interview a couple weeks ago, right? And then what we find out about Matt Lauer. I mean, it's ridiculous. You can't trust the media in terms of everyone in the media seems to have all their own issues. You saw, you know, I think Barbara Walters, if she's still cognizant, and she owes Corey Feldman an apology. I mean, here she was, a leading woman reporter of her time, and I don't know if you saw in our film or if you've seen on YouTube how she says, "Oh, you're going after an entire industry," and she's sort of shaming Corey Feldman.
Yeah, I remember that.
The shame should be on her. I mean, she's a supposed investigative journalist who's gotten all these awards, and we talk about what a great female reporter she was and what a groundbreaker she was. And really, look at what she's doing there. Instead of using her power to help shine a light on this issue, she's shaming him, and it's ridiculous. And I don't know if I had any respect for her, but if I did, I lost it all right there until she gives him an apology, you know. And then you see Matt Lauer. I mean, what a scumbag, right? And the way he's talking to Corey Feldman, or, you know, there's another interview with him and Bill O'Reilly, and he's going after Bill for sexual abuse, and it's like, come on, dude, you know. And that's another problem in this industry is we don't know who we can trust. We're talking with lots of different reporters, but sometimes you don't know if these reporters are trying to get information out from you because they might be working for the other side, or somebody might be trying to make money. And sometimes people are coming to us with tips, and we've got to vet them. And it's almost like a lot of spy shit going on right now. It's bizarre, and you know, we're just trying to get as much information out there that we can as quickly as possible. And we hope the media seems to be picking this up a little better, but damn is the media slow, and damn is the media lazy, and they are so scared of reporting things. It's ridiculous. And a lot of these companies that would be reporting this information are owned by people who might be involved, you know, whether unwittingly or wittingly. So a lot of what we've been finding is, you know, it's independent reporters, it's podcasts like this one, it's international news is sometimes better than American news. I think people in the UK and in Germany and France, I think they have a better understanding and a better acceptance of pedophilia and how it works its way in society than maybe we do over here in the United States. We also have another problem here in the United States is the political aspect of this. This is a apolitical issue for us, but depending on what shows we go on, we always get grief. Everybody's trying to make it about Trump or Obama or right or left, and this sexual abuse has no party affiliation. And, you know, if you go on a right-wing radio show or a left-wing television show, then people sort of dismiss it based on their political beliefs, and that it shouldn't have anything to do with that. I almost feel like the American population, their level of their ability to discern information on their own has gotten worse. People are already taking sides and prejudging facts just based on who they're getting it from. So in a lot of ways, you know, we don't care who we talk to or what show we're on. We're just trying to get this information out there as wide as possible because we know it affects everybody. And this is an American issue. This is a global issue. And it's real bad here in the United States, and it's real bad in Hollywood. And we can change it now. Thankfully, the reason why we released the film was because of Harvey Weinstein. And we knew once the Harvey Weinstein thing came on that we had to get this film out there and let people see it again. And, you know, we're up to, I don't know, about maybe 5-6 million views worldwide with no publicity, with no advertisement. You know, I'm sure most people can't even find Vimeo. So if a big company took this on, this would be something that would be seen by 40, 50, 60 million people easily. And that's our goal. And then our goal is to get people talking about this situation, because once we blow the lid off this, it'll change everything about Hollywood. I think Hollywood will be a safer place for people to work. We'll have better films. It'll be more merit-based. We won't have this abuse of power. Because and honestly, creatively, a lot of Hollywood is being held back right now. A lot of creative people are being held back by these sexual predators because they're in positions of power. I mean, how can we say that Harvey Weinstein really cared about film when half the time he's over in Cannes just trying to rape women in his apartment? You should have been focused on finding really good films, you know? And that, me as somebody who loves films, I think that the more we can get these sick people out of the industry, the better, because we'll have better television and film, and that's what I want as well.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it seems like such a giant, like, almost like a fictional movie, you know, like a fictional book, you know, just how intertwined this all is, and all the covering up and all the suppressing of information. And then, like you said, you go on interviews and then people just want to basically use your film or your information to kind of just for their own political gain to kind of, oh, let's just bash Democrats, let's just bash Republicans, let's see if we can bash the other side, and like you said, this has nothing to do with either or. Predators don't care about ideologies, they don't care about any of that stuff. I mean, they so it's a huge issue, and I'm so glad there's people like yourself who are going on shows like RT and NPR and finding places that will have you on to talk about this, because I'm sure that it's not the easiest easiest like topic to get booked for, and I'm just glad you're doing it, because it's a very important conversation. It's more relevant now than ever, and being able to talk about it and sparking these conversations hopefully will only help people come out publicly and talk about their experiences, which hopefully in effect will have more people come out and talk about their experiences, and they'll feel safer to do so. So it's very important to get this information out there, get this documentary out there. On our YouTube channel, in the video description, I always put all the links to the websites and all that stuff, and all the social media links. So I'll put links to your documentary and all that stuff. But if you want to tell the listeners, if there's anything you want to share, if there's any websites you want them to check out, or any social media you want them to check out, any place where they can get more information, then let me know now.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, we've got about 31,000 followers on Facebook, but we want to keep growing that. So you can find us on Facebook at An Open Secret Doc. Also, we're trying to grow our Twitter, because the more distributors see a larger Twitter, the better. Right now, I think we have about close to 5,000, but we'd like to get it up to 10 or 20,000 at least. So please follow us on Twitter at An Open Secret. And actually, we release a lot of information on Twitter, a lot of articles. We're on top of all the breaking news, so that's where you want to find some breaking news on this, you can. And then we also post a lot of our clips and our videos on our YouTube channel. It's at An Open Secret, just YouTube channel. And I think we've got about 50 clips up there of our various interviews. And if you look on those, and also clips from the film, and just also things that we follow. I mean, this is a type of thing where your listeners could go down a rabbit hole for like 3 or 4 days of just different clips and different stories that are how this is all interrelated. And if anyone out there has any tips that listens to this, they can always contact us. People reach out via Facebook, they reach out via Twitter, they reach out via email. We're easy to find. We can put you in touch with reporters. We can, maybe we'll potentially talk to you if it's about something factual that we know about. But we've helped out a lot of people. We've set them up. There's going to be a lot more interviews coming out. Reporters are working on a lot of stories right now that are going to drop in the next days, if not, weeks, if not days. So we're here to help. We're here to spread the word, and we're always here to take tips. And if we can't help you, we can put you in touch with someone that can. And we just want, and also hashtag An Open Secret. If you hashtag An Open Secret, you'll be able to, find us everywhere. Google Plus, Facebook, Twitter. We're all over the place. We're easy to find.
Great, yeah. And believe me, I have 2 little kids, so this topic is near and dear to my heart. I think it's really important to do what we can to try to let people come out and talk about this, and hopefully also make it easier for people who are having these mental desires and physical desires to come out and talk about possibly getting help, because it's great if we can get lock people up and get people to come out and talk about their stories, but it's even better if we can get people to talk about having these desires before the crime's even committed. And I think that's also really important. And it's a scary time. Like I said, I have 2 little kids, and something I think about quite often is just homes, or when your kids go to school or play on a team or whatnot. It's like the type of adults that are around, you know, and just think about, you know, how easy it is to manipulate a kid, you know, when they trust you and they like you and stuff like that. And it's scary because you want to believe you can trust people and that, you know, you know somebody, but you never know. And you know, it is a scary thought, and it's something that I'm sure terrifies every parent listening to this. But it's so I think it's important to get this information out there, get people to talk about it, get people to watch the film, share the film. I tell people all the time with my podcast, the simple act of just retweeting something or sharing an article, or in this case sharing a documentary, a trailer, or something that's linked to this documentary on your social media, it goes a long way. I mean, you never know who you're reaching, and you might have a handful of friends that check it out, and then they talk to their friends about it, and it causes a ripple effect. And that's what this show's about. I think it's all about the idea that we can all start a little ripple, and you know, we can all have an impact, and you never know how big that ripple turns out to be. So it's important that we all do our part. So I can't thank you enough, Matthew, for your time. Like I said, I think what you guys are doing are beyond courageous, and really it's awesome to see that there's people out there with the courage to take on such a controversial topic, and even with so much pushback. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for getting the word out. I mean, it's true. Every one of us can just do a little bit, and this just started as a little idea between two guys trying to do some good. And, you know, we've also had other victims come forward who are now talking to the press that maybe otherwise wouldn't have. I mean, even Anthony Edwards said the reason he came out talking about Gary Goddard is because of this film. Just the other day, I put somebody in touch with a reporter. You know, it took her 2 or 3 weeks to really get the courage to talk and about what she wanted to expose. But we're seeing that snowball effect. It's coming more and more. And just everyone out there, have faith and just be courageous, and you do make a difference. Everyone that talks makes a difference, and it helps. Every little bit helps. And this has been a long, slow slog, but it's picking up speed now, and we're going to win. We're going to win this, and that's the most important thing, because we're on the right side of history here. And if we all do our little bit together, we are still more powerful than these people who are out there perpetrating these crimes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think, like you said, we are on the right side of history, and they can. I think when this issue is this big and there's that many people involved, they can only hide it and suppress it for so long until I think the whole story gets exposed and blown up. So, and when that does, you'll be a huge contributor to why that happens. So, I think it's definitely something you can be proud of, and I think you've already been a huge contributor. I know that. I've heard a lot of rumors and stuff like that, but your film was the first documentary that I saw or piece of evidence that really had people who were actually working in Hollywood, who were actual victims, you know, using real people's names that were involved in this and showing real cases of this. And, you know, it really helped open my eyes on how common this is and how big of an issue this really is. So, thank you so much, Matthew. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully, you know, in the near future, we could have you on again to talk about, I'm sure, some future projects or some new, you know, things that are going to be coming out, because I don't think that this is the end of this story.
No, there'll be other things related to this, and you know, I also work a lot in the true crime field, so I have a lot of different, very interesting stories that might be of interest to your listeners as well. So. Hopefully, I'm sure we'll be able to talk again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. And like I said, just hats off to everything you're doing. It's not easy. So it's you know, to go around talking about this and really, especially when you're probably breaking some people's hearts by letting them know that people that they love are, you know, some of them are monsters. But you know, I think that's just something that has to be exposed regardless. You know, even if internally we want to deny that some people we love, you know, we love their work, they are monsters, you know. So it is one of those things where I'm kind of on the same boat with you, that you can't separate the artist and the art. I think when you support the art, you're in some way supporting the artist. And if the artist is a monster, then you might want to think twice about supporting the art. So it's
exactly. And look, at the end of the day, when we're talking about some superhero movie, how much art is that really, anyways? I mean, come on, it's entertainment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Mona Lisa here. So
yeah, it's not some life-changing, changing piece of art that's gonna change filmmaking forever. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. No, I definitely hear you. Yeah, so I definitely, I'm with you. I think that, when you find out about these people and you hear so many rumors around their names and stuff, I think it's really important to do that simple thing of maybe, because if you want to really have an effect, sometimes hitting them in the wall is the best way of doing it. And if you stop watching films that some of these people work in or are part of, then it does have some effect on Hollywood, and maybe Hollywood will just think twice about who they're hiring. So that's
totally. And once they move, I mean, these people, they're difficult people as it is anyways, and this gets to their head and their abuse of power. It shows up in their films. I mean, look at Bryan Singer not being on the set right now. I mean, that's not good for the film, right? So it's not that film needed him because he's such a genius. I'm sure there's a million other directors out there. Hollywood has no shortage of talent. Okay, that's what I'm saying here. There's a million other people that can step in and do much better projects than some of these sick people who are involved in this are doing. So let's just get them out of the industry. And what better excuse to fire someone and get them out of the industry than if we can prove that they're sexual abusers and possible pedophiles? Because the reason why we chose pedophilia is because we figured that is one area that nobody could defend. We figured no one's going to come out and defend pedophilia. And what we've actually seen is that people are actually kind of defending pedophilia. Like, they're not coming out and defending it, but they're not coming out against it either. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that has to change. So we need these people to lose their jobs and be gone and be out of the industry. And there's plenty of other talented filmmakers out there that can fill in the void. Hollywood will survive. It's going to survive better and thrive better if we can just remove the people like Harvey Weinstein's out of the industry who make it a horrible place to work. I mean, I actually applied for a job. I was offered a job at Miramax in the mid-'90s when it was a place to be. And the girl who I was replacing was like one of Harvey's assistants. And once HR sat me down with her and asked me to talk to her about the job, and HR left the room, she told me to run. She told me, don't take this job. It's awful. You don't want to work here. I'm miserable. And at the time, I didn't realize what was going on because I was, young and just out of college. I couldn't believe that she was giving up this job. But now I realize what she meant. And I'm glad she told me that, because I ended up not taking the job. But everyone that's worked in the industry, and I don't know if you have, but there's always been this issue of, okay, you have to deal with like a lot of verbal abuse, and it's a tougher industry to break into, and you have to do your time, and you have to prove yourself, and you have to, if you see that movie Swimming with Sharks with ironically Kevin Spacey and Frank Whaley, I think it's from like 1994. It's about like the life of an assistant and how much that sucks. Or in like Entourage, if you see, Ari's assistant and what he goes through. It's almost like there's been an acceptance of that. So you go into the industry sort of accepting that, but that needs to change too. I mean, I went through it. It's almost like a hazing. And no industry really does that as bad as Hollywood does. And that needs to be worked out of it too, because it takes away from the professionalism of the industry, and it allows for these types of abusive personalities to be promoted and work their way up. And they're the worst people to work with. And nobody wants to work with those types of people anymore. So I think that's going to be another benefit of all this. It's going to be a return to professionalism, and it's going to be a return to civility in the industry that maybe it hasn't had in a long time. I don't know if it ever had it, but definitely has gotten worse, and maybe now we can start sending it in the other direction. And that's another goal I hope we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't thank you enough. I think this is like I said, a super important documentary. I'll put links to it, so I'll try to make it as easy as possible to find. But you can look up, people Google a Open Secret documentary, you'll find it. You'll find either one of the social media websites that will have links to it, or you'll find the Vimeo version of it.
Yeah, and it's on, the links to the Vimeo are on our Facebook page, and they're on our Twitter page. And if you just go to Google and hashtag an Open Secret, a link will pop up. So you'll be able to find it. So thanks for having me, man.
Hey, thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it. Great work, and hopefully we have you on in the near future, because it sounds like there's a lot more that you can, a lot more interesting stories you have to contribute.
Oh, I definitely do. So for sure.
Great. Hey, enjoy the rest of your day and keep in touch. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Take care. Bye.
Believe in the ripple effect.